Ladies and gentlemen, let's Red Gaming Tedcom video. Let us review Nvidia's GeForce GTX 780 Ti. This is the EVGA SuperClocked ACX version. So, let's just go ahead and say this right off the bat. The Ti is an absolute performance monster. Now, we are putting numbers and video benchmarks in this particular video, but be warned, the process of recording does reduce the performance numbers slightly, about 5 to 10%, maybe slightly more depending on the game. If you want the actual accurate numbers, you can check out the full review, which is linked in the video's description. So what is the Ti? Well, it's actually faster than the original GeForce GTX Titan, which was released back in February of last year. This time, however, there is an additional single SMX enabled, which are basically clusters of processors, clusters of streaming processors on the graphics card. There were 14 enabled on the Titan, there are 15 on this, and as well as the upcoming Black Edition of the Titan. So, EVGA has, of course, put their own spins on the card. For a start, there is a custom cooler, which does allow extra clock speed. You're looking at 1006 megahertz, boosting up to 1072. This is much higher than the reference board, which, by the way, is 876 versus and 928 respectively of core and boost. You're looking at 2,880 stream processors, 240 text units, and of course 48 ROPs with 3 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory running at 7 gigahertz effectively on a 384-bit bus, which gives you a rather ludicrous 336 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth. So, power connections and power draw are pretty much exactly the same as a standard Ti. You're going to be looking at one 6-pin and one 8-pin, by the way, included in the box, which is a fairly nice touch, just in case you happen to be going SLI or something similar. There is a 6-pin and an 8-pin power adapter. You've also got DVI to VGA. I don't know how many of you are actually going to be using that, but regardless, there's a couple of nice stickers. There's a poster, a driver disc, but probably better just to download the latest from Nvidia. And you've also got the normal crap that you'd expect, like warranty manuals, that type of thing. Incidentally, you also do get a free game. It was emailed to me at the very least, and that's pretty much it. So, in terms of the test setup, I was running at 4.4 gigahertz with 4770K, that's a Haswell, at 16 gigabytes of memory, and an SSD. Once again, if you want the rest of the specifications, you can check out the full article. Crysis 3 is indeed absolutely beautiful on this card. You can be playing an average frame rate of 50 frames a second at 1440p with FXAA. And amazingly enough, the game is actually playable at 1080p with MSAA times 8, which is absolutely just insanity in my personal opinion. I was doing some benchmarking of Metro last night. You're hitting 55 frames a second. Tomb Raider at 1440p with all the goodies turned up. You're hitting 63, and that's with TressFX enabled, and so on and so on. It is absolutely pure insanity what this card is capable of. Just simply a single card is probably going to make do at 1080p and 1440p as well, as long as you're not super bothered about like super high levels of anti-aliasing. Even during operation, the card was fairly quiet. It is worth noting that fans do become a little bit audible at about the 70-75% mark, but that's pretty expected. It's certainly not a wind turbine, but you can kind of hear it. Currently, right now, because I'm testing, I have the side of my case off, so it's more audible to me deliberately. And on that same subject, there is a very slight coil whine to the card. It's not very noticeable. For me, it's if I've got all audio switched off on the game and I'm running something that's really strenuous, and then you can kind of hear the power going through the card, but it's very subtle. And if you've got headphones on, or you've got just the standard game audio playing, even through speakers, even fairly low to be honest, you probably won't hear it, especially if you're in the middle of pew pew pew. So there are a few aspects we do need to discuss. The first is the 3 gigabytes of RAM. Now 3 gigabytes, considering that you're looking at like the R9s, for example, with 4, or even the Titan itself in the black edition with 6, 3 gigs can appear a little bit dicey. Now you can check out the full review, which, as I said, once again is linked in the description, where I have got some screenshots of GPU-Z, which I set to monitor the average as well as the maximum memory usage. Now the average was 1.9 gigs, whereas the max was 2.1. This is using Windows 8, by the way, on Crysis 3 at 1440p with FXAA. Now, if you were to put something like MSAA times 4 into the mix, you're going to be hitting another 300 megabytes on both the average and the max, so you're certainly going to be getting very close to maxing out the memory usage of the card. On the other hand, it still does play okay, and honestly speaking, you're probably not going to do it with the performance numbers anyway, because at 1440p with MSAA times 4, you know, you're probably not going to have the frame rate you're really desiring, to be honest with you. You can certainly do it, but you're going to be hitting a lot of like the 30 range, maybe slightly higher depending on what's going on, and of course overclocking. My point being that the memory limitation is actually going to be more a thing if you're going with SLI and you're focused on 4K displays. I've given more of a memory breakdown in the full article, however, because obviously we're fairly limited on time here. Now, what about overclocking? Because obviously that's quite a big deal to quite a few people. Now, overclocking, just coming straight out of the box, when you buy this, it's got an overclock of 130 megahertz, which is quite nice actually. Now, depending on the game, this could be anything from like 5 to 10 frames a second advantage over the stock reference design. Bear in mind that you are going to be paying a price premium for this. In the UK, if you shop around, I paid roughly £60 extra. It was like £55–60 extra for this card compared to the like standard reference design. It's up to you if you want to go with that. For example, a lot of cards can overclock to like 1200 megahertz boost anyway, but the SuperClock ACX actually overclocks even further. Now, I will be doing a guide in the next few days, which is going to be showing you how to actually push the power band, or should I say the power limits, actually further than 106%. It does include basically a BIOS flash, but if you're not willing to do that, you can still hit the 1200 plus, 1230, 1250, depending obviously a lot on Silicon Lottery. Memory, on the other hand, is absolutely crazy. It really is. You can actually be hitting 450 megahertz extra just on an overclock, which means that you can actually be getting very close to something like 400 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth, which is absolutely ludicrous. To be honest, however, if you're not going to be BIOS flashing, and this is just for my limited testing on overclocking, I've not done a full overclocking guide yet, so I've not done super testing on this, but it appears that, honestly speaking, unless you're willing to BIOS flash, very much increase the power level, the power going into it, increase the voltages, in other words, you're probably not going to be able to hit enough of a core clock speed to actually make it worth increasing the RAM to that level. Once again, your mileage may vary. You may have RAM that doesn't really overclock that well, but certainly on the RAM that I had, it hit like 450 megahertz, and I just didn't bother to push it anymore. That actually means that Firestrike hit over 5.8K on the extreme, and 11.7 if you're actually going with the non-extreme. Just for reference, on my very quick screw around with overclocking, I actually did hit 6K on the extreme with a single card, which is pretty damn crazy if you ask me. So once again, there are a lot of different considerations here. You know, the card is very expensive. You've also got this whole AMD versus Nvidia technology thing right now. Obviously you've got the G-Sync, which may or may not be important to you. If you're really happy with the current monitor you've got, it's very difficult to argue, for example, if you've got like a 30-inch display, to get rid of that and decide to go with G-Sync. So it's pretty difficult right now because it's pretty early in its life. It's a very impressive technology though. AMD, of course, are pushing their Mantle API, which I've done an interview with AMD, so you can check that out if you so desire on the channel, as well as their own True Audio technology. The True Audio is going to be used in Thief, and Mantle, of course, has been confirmed in multiple games. It's already in the beta kind of testing stages with Battlefield 4, and it's looking to be impressive, but it's certainly not cut and dry whether developers are going to really start to push it yet. In addition to that, of course, Nvidia have their own technologies. For example, Shield, it has streaming technologies. You've got G-Sync and PhysX. So really it swings and roundabouts of what version is best. I'd personally recommend just looking at your budget, deciding, what drivers do you like? That's another thing. Some people absolutely hate the Nvidia drivers. Other people absolutely hate the AMD drivers. No rhyme and reason to it. It's just the way it's laid out. So that's another consideration. Overall, I actually love the GTX EVGA SuperClocked ACX. I would really recommend it. It's not a perfect card. I do wish there was just another 1 GB of memory, but it is considerably cheaper than the Black Edition Titan. Obviously, you are going to be losing that double precision, but that doesn't really mean anything if you're not doing basically things that require scientific calculations and that type of thing anyway. So for average gamers, it's not going to really make any difference whatsoever. So yeah, there you have it. If on the other hand you don't really want to spend this amount of money, then certainly something like just the standard GTX 780, which by the way overclocks pretty well as also. And you've also got, of course, the R9 290 and the 290X. Obviously you've got problems with the reference coolers on those, particularly on the X. But obviously now we've got Asus and other third-party manufacturers who are creating their own boards, which have definitely improved things, or should I say their own coolers and their own non-reference designs, which have definitely improved things. Overall, in my opinion, the GTX 780 is looking to be a pretty solid buy. I would recommend it for those of you who want literally the best performance possible, particularly if you've got the cash to burn. Definitely 1080p. One card is going to be enough. You're going to easily be able to put like 4 times MSAA, or you could even do downsampling. More on that, by the way, in another video on the channel. I'll also be writing an article on that with more images in a more in-depth guide on that, if you so desire, which is really good. As well, of course, as 1440, definitely enough power there, typically for a single card to run. It won't always be at 60 frames a second, but certainly if you're willing to like dip in the 40s to 50s at points, then you can certainly go with a decent level of anti-aliasing. Or if you're willing to go with FXAA, then you're going to be hitting 60 frames a second on pretty much all of the titles, even at 1440p. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the review. Once again, you can check the full article if you want more information. And I will see you soon. Take care, my friends, and check us out soon for more reviews. We're going to be reviewing the Maxwell GPUs when they come out, as well as some other shinies. Anyway, I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.